Welcome to the Acts 29 podcast. Acts 29 is an organization and global network of churches that exist to plant churches worldwide. Now here's your host, Vice President of Acts 29 Church Planting, Dr. Adam Flint.
All right. Hey, welcome back to the Acts 29 podcast. And I'm here with two of my good friends, Todd Hickox. How are you?
Good, man. You?
All right. I'm doing great. Yeah. And Joey Prezzuti.
Hey.
How are you?
Good.
Good. Well, hey, before we jump in, why don't you guys introduce yourselves a little bit? Like, Todd, tell us about family and where you're thinking about planting, when all that's happening.
Yeah. So I'll go family first. My wife of 15 and a half years, her name is Heather. She's an assistant principal out in Baker County. It's a long story as to why we're still out there, but it makes a lot of sense. And she's crushing it. She's the best at what she does. And she's the best wife and mom that I could ever think of or dream of. And then I've got three kids. I've got Amelia, who's 10. I've got George, who's 6. And I've got Allie, who is 4. George and Allie, we adopted just over a year ago. They were our foster kids, but they're ours, man. They're got our last name and all of our stuff. So, as for planting, right now I haven't entered residency. We're going to talk more about that. I haven't entered that process yet, but sometime, I don't know, a year from now, it could be 25 into 25, 26. We're going to be planting in the Bozeman, Montana area. And if we get into the details of how and why later.
Just tell, why you're in Florida.
Yeah.
How the heck are you ending up in Bozeman, Montana?
Well, honestly, I like to tell people it's your fault. So, but
don't put that on me.
It all came from having a conversation with a church planter, much like yourself, who we were just having one of those, I want to check in, see how you're doing. It's Jeff Looney at Dr. Church down in Green Cove. And that began this, unraveling, I think, of what I would say a calling in my life to plant.
Yeah.
And through conversations with you, our leadership team here at the church, that was just affirmed. And through that process of discerning. And then you were visiting one of our partners in Kalispell. You were there, and I think you either called me or texted me.
Yep.
And said, would you ever consider Montana? And you told me about two cities, Bozeman and Whitefish, because they're fast growing, like micro cities in the country. And I was like, why would I do that? I'm from Florida.
It's warm. It's good.
But Montana, they have like seasons and stuff, right? So It was seriously almost became a joke in my house.
Right.
And then, again, we just prayed. We went, me and my wife went on vacation, prayed together, and kind of came to a point. Really, the Lord used my wife in a huge way. Every step that I've taken in ministry, honestly, has been with her, like a affirmation, that her word,
Good
the
man.
Lord used her in a huge way. She was like, if this is the place that God wants to send us, then I'm totally down. Let's do this. And if you're the man that God's called to do it. So that's how we've ended up. We came back to you and was like, all right, well, why not instead of why? And so we're walking through the process, and we'll eventually get there. So
great.
That's awesome.
Hey, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Joey, how about you? Tell us a little bit about you, family, where are you planting?
Yeah, my name is Joey. Married to my high school sweetheart, Taylor. Met her on MySpace where everyone had a friend named Tom. So shout out to the good old days. Back in East Tennessee where I'm from. And came down to Jacksonville, Florida in 2011 for law school and then started practicing law in 2014. And at that time in my life, I was very anti-church. I was kind of part of that. I was struggling with my faith at that time and kind of estranged from God and had a really deep foundation, but just gospel didn't change my life. And it was affecting our marriage. And then by God's grace, we met a church called the Crossing Church on Racetrack Road, planted by Adam Flint, and fell in love with the church, fell in love with Jesus' bride again. And it was, that's never stopped. And so it's been an incredible journey from that time on. And part of that has been turned in about 5 years ago. I was serving as an elder at the Crossing Church, and I just felt like there's got to be something more to my life than making good money as an attorney and suing people, and that's all fun. Don't get me wrong, but
it's fun to sue people.
It is, or to say it too, a lot. Yeah. Be on the other side. It's fun. Yeah. You'll see. Yeah. But no, it was a deep passion. The Lord started just convicting my heart about what should I be doing with my life, with the resources and tools that have been given. And so I just started questioning the idea of planting, pastoring full time, or at least pastoring in a sense of just giving my life up to ministry in a more vocational setting. And that's when I reached out to Adam about, hey, what should I do? I don't know how to plant a church. I don't know if that's what I'm called to do. I need to vet that out in my heart, but I think that's what God's calling me to do. And so Gather Church is the church plant that we will be launching in January of next year in Trout Creek Academy in Shearwater off of State Road 16, St. Johns County. We live there in Silverleaf, so just down the road. And you said micro city. I mean, going to North St. Johns County is not going to St. Augustine, downtown, Night of Lights. It's two different areas, two different contexts. And we've just seen a mass of people from 2020 on leaving the North and West and all over the country, moving south. And I've been telling people, if you want to reach the North, come to the South, because they're all here. But it's been awesome to see so many new families just hungry for community, hungry for a new church, hungry to be part of something that God's doing new. And it's been incredible this year, just doing kind of vision nights, gatherings, and just getting ready for January. So we're super excited about it.
Yeah. And we're recording this in November of 24. And you're looking at launching, you're doing a Christmas Eve service and then launching in January 25, but you just did a night of worship, right?
Yeah, night of worship Friday at the Trout Creek School, and that was our first big event there, and the school's been so gracious to us, and our team crushed it, and we had a great turnout on a Friday night of all the things you could be doing, and people are just showing up, man. It's just been, God's been so good to us, and just responding and just riding that joy as long as we can and that hype, and just excited about it, man.
Yeah. It's interesting hearing you guys talk, because that Montana area where you're going has this huge influx from the West Coast of people that aren't kind of native Montanans. Right. Yeah. There's that crew that's there that's deep, and then there's all this influx, and then you're down in Florida, and there's kind of the handful of native Floridians, but there's this huge influx from the Northeast. And so you're both planting in contexts, or will be planting in contexts that are I've seen huge migrations of people, and are not the typical areas they used to be 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, the areas we're in now in St. Johns County is unreached by definition. And I think that's hard to imagine, because you go to St. Johns County, it doesn't look unreached, but it's deeply unreached. And people just are hungry for the gospel. They're hungry for community. And so I think we need to leverage the opportunities God has given us in His sovereignty through this time. Just as with Montana, God is bringing people, gathering people to different places they never thought, and they want a church. And so we have the opportunity to do that, which is super exciting. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we're going to talk church planting residencies today. So there's a new residency that's coming to Acts 29 in January of 25. Yeah. So while we're recording this, it's being built out. It's going to be released. And Acts 29 has this pipeline where begins with like identifying guys, that kind of recruiting, identifying, and then moves into training, and then assessment, and then coaching cohorts, and then resourcing and all that. And so under training, there's apprenticeship. You talked about like discerning call and all that. That apprenticeship is geared towards helping guys figure out their call to church planting. And then a residency comes after that and really helps train guys to plant churches, helps them get ready for assessment, and then helps them plant. And so we're going to talk about the residency a little bit today. But before we do that, I want to jump in to 2 Timothy 2:15. And it says this: do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. Now, I mean, obviously he's not talking about residency in particular, but he is saying some things about what it means to be a worker, a pastor in this, that might add value and say, hey, here's why we need to probably do training, do a residency, something like that. So When you read that, do your best to present yourself to God as one approved, a worker who has no need to be ashamed, rightly handling the word of truth. What do you think are some of the big pieces in there that are important as you step into planting?
Yeah, I think probably thought more about this. Go for it.
I think for me, it's so much in trusting the process and allowing the process to bring out my weaknesses and my failings, but also bring out my gifts and calling.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at some point you have to submit to something or to someone. And so obviously the Lord first, but then I think through the Lord's church and his bride, I think there's something beautiful about submitting to your eldership and leadership and letting that process go through to vet me out, to see what are my issues. Am I called to do something? And so hard, I tend to think I know everything about me, and come to find out I don't. My wife has made me aware of that, but the church has made me aware of that, and it's only been for my good. It's never been for my bad. It's always been for my good. And so I hear that, and I think, if you're wanting to plant a church, are you willing to submit to something greater than yourself? Because if you're not, then you're never going to lead a church, and you're not going to do it well. I think anyone can lead a church or start a church. Do you want to do it well? And I think that, to me, resonates well with me, with the residency, with that passage as well.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, when I look at this, present yourself to God as one approved. It could also say that is one approved after being tested.
Yeah.
Another word for tested is assessed.
Right?
Yeah. So like you just said, I've never done this before. Right. Though I've been in pastoral ministry. The starting of something has not happened. So one, there's a great deal of learning that I need to do. There's a great deal of submission to authority that I need to do. There's I need to learn more about myself. I think I got a pretty good hold on myself until I allow other people to peer in, and not just into me, but into my wife and into my kids. That's why I think this assessment is going to matter a lot.
Yeah.
But also something caught my attention as a worker who has no need to be ashamed. After it says present yourself to God, do you think the Lord is ashamed of us? No.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the things that we're preparing to do, this is why I think these things matter a lot. I don't think the Lord is ashamed of us, but I don't want us to get to a point as we're trying to plant a church and launch a thing, to where we've missed the mark in several areas. Yeah. That's why I think stuff like this matters a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said it. I love how he says you present yourself to God, right? Because this is first and foremost a God-centered thing.
Yep.
Yeah. But the way we start to see, that some of that approval is through the church and through the people around us. And so, yeah, I think this residency helps play a role in that, of maybe cleaning up some areas when you present yourself, being affirmed in some areas when you present yourself, and being able to handle the word. I mean, that's what we are as pastors, right? I mean, Ephesians 4:11-12 says we're pastors, teachers, and the way we pastor is through the word of truth. And so that piece is super important.
Yeah, and I would say just anyone who wants to plant a church, the question you have to ask yourself is why, right? And so sometimes I think the approval can come from, there was a time in my life 4 or 5 years ago, I wanted to plant a church to prove a point, to plant a church out of spite or revenge or whatever those reasons are. And when you go through a residency, at least what happened for me, it became very obvious that I was planting for the wrong motivations. Yeah. So it's a reminder that good things become bad things, as Paul David Tripp says, because of me, not because of the thing itself. And I think that going through the approval, I need to figure out why I'm doing this. And the assessment and the residency weeds that out quickly. Because as you're going through the process, are you willing to be told no? Are you willing to be told, hey, you're just not going to do it. You're not going to be allowed to do it. Are you okay with that? Is your approval so high up with Christ that it doesn't matter? And I think that to me resonates when you were talking about approval. It kind of hits me on the head because it was me vetting out my own motivations and making sure it was done for the right reasons. So, for sure.
Yeah. So, Joey, you recently wrapped up a residency program. Tell us a little bit about that, how you got into it, what it was like, kind of how long it was, just kind of the whole thing.
Yeah, so about 4 years ago, in 2020, I wanted to really see if I was called and qualified and vetted to plant a church. And so one of the things I did was I went to another Acts 29 church that had sort of specialized in this. The district church, Pastor Boyd Bettis, had mentored men in the past who planted church, Jeff Looney with Doxa and Cedric with Dream. And I knew that, but I only knew of Boyd. I didn't know him real well. And so when I reached out to Adam about a contact, that's what began my residency journey. And I just reached out to Boyd and said, hey, listen, you don't know me. I don't know you, but I want to plant a church one day, but I need to see if you think I can.
Yeah.
And that's hard because now I'm trusting someone I don't know, who I know is highly vetted by others. And so I trust those other people. And then I just started from there, 2020 to 2024. We didn't really set up a timetable. There wasn't a structure of like, how long do you have to be here? But I really believe so much of it had to do with the timing of my heart, the timing of my wife's heart. When was she ready? She was very adamant about having a third child before we ever planted a church. I was very adamant in not having a third child. So somewhere a compromise, which doesn't work with having kids. But the Lord stirred my heart to have another child, and her name is Eden Grace. She's 3, and I have twin girls that are 10. And so the gift of all of that is letting the residency kind of just pry into my heart and just working through that. And it was a 4-year journey that was incredible. Got to literally start from having preached once a month, being an elder of a church, to going down to serving on the sidewalks again. It was so incredibly humbling. Right. It was incarnational to do that again, but it was good for me to remember why am I doing this, and to go from there to getting to preach, being ordained there. But just going through that process, being mentored and shadowing Pastor Boyd, and then going to staff meetings, being on staff, seeing how that works. But really having Boyd ask me those tough assessment-like questions, really getting to the heart of why I do what I do and why I have the fears I do or doubts. And I think that is what the residency was so good at. So that was my 4-year journey with that, and it was incredible with the district.
So most residencies are not 4 years long.
Right.
I mean, one, you stepped in a crazy time.
Sure.
I mean, 2020 was a little bit of an anomaly. I mean, that's an understatement.
Absolutely.
But tell us a little bit about how that was structured, not structured.
Yeah.
What you liked about that, what you didn't.
Yeah. One of the things I enjoyed about it, the residency with District Church, was that it really was about my pace and not about forcing us through the process. It was about really seeing the timing and tempo of our hearts to make sure we were ready to plant. And so if we had done a 2-year, it would have not worked. My wife wasn't ready. I wasn't ready. But it seemed like it worked at the right time. And so much of that had to do with that. The other part of it was just serving, giving my heart a chance to submit and be not about me, but be about the church. And so allowing Pastor Boyd to kind of mentor me over the years, and just me following up with him, meeting with him a couple times a month, talking to him constantly, be behind the scenes as he made staff decisions. Him calling me afterwards. Some of my favorite memories, he would call me and say, hey, I want to tell you why I made this decision, and I want you to understand the thinking I had, because I couldn't share that with the staff because you're there. But that was just an insight that I'd never had before. Sure. And to see that allow me to be a better planner, but be a better pastor, to know how to lead people well. And so I think that's probably why there's such a beautiful thing with Acts 29, doing a structured residency to give the men a chance to go through a process to allow them to be a better planner, so they can plant churches that are healthier and better.
Yeah.
And good on Boyd for taking the time to
absolutely
do all that. That's awesome.
Yeah. So Todd, you haven't done a residency yet. You're going to jump in January 25 or a little bit after that and get going. Why? I mean, you've been in ministry a minute, and you're a great pastor with experience. Why do a church planting residency when you've got a bunch of experience and all this behind you? Why do that? Like, why not just pack it up, head out to Montana, and go?
I've never done it. I've never done it before. I like I said, I love the church. I love shepherding. I love everything that we get to do. But when it comes to parachuting into a new place with hopefully new people that would say, we'll go with you, and to start a new missional movement, if you will.
Yeah.
Never done it. And so to walk through all of the process, honestly, I'm looking forward to, because like I said a minute ago, I think I've got grips on me. And there's probably a ton that I don't. You know?
Sure.
And it seems like through seasons of life, the Lord reveals more and more. Like with adopting and fostering these kids, I thought I was good until they entered my life.
Yeah.
So there's stuff like that. I've never been through the process of what it means not just to do the vision, but to fund it. Yeah. You know, there's conversations that I've yet to have. There's things that I've yet to pray through. Like, I want to love Jesus more as a result of doing something like this.
Yeah, you'll cling to him like you never have before.
And honestly, in one hand, it's like, man, there's a great amount of fear. And I don't want to say fear because that's a spirit and that's not of the Lord, but unknown.
Yeah.
And I'm also really looking forward to what that's like. To be able to, I don't know, but I know the one who does. And so I'm just going to cling. I'm going to cling tightly to him and his word, and to just fall on what I believe is a legitimate, irrevocable calling that he's placed on my life.
Yeah.
And so, I've never done it. I want to, again, sit under a process of authority to evaluate, to learn, and do all of those things. Hopefully do them well.
Yeah. So, Joey, what were some of the takeaways for you? Like, when you think, I mean, personally and just practically, like, man, I'm sure glad I did this because this set me up well, or.
Yeah, I think personally it's kind of like what you said. I think when anytime you're submitting to healthy leadership, it is always going to make me better. It's just going to make me better. And I think that's the Lord. The Lord has equipped his church to do that in the right way. And so I think I came out of that experience of 4 years of that just stronger in my faith with Christ, more aware of my confidence that I have in him, not afraid as I used to be. And just walking out of that experience, just bolder. You learn how to fundraise, and then you learn not to. I tell people all the time, man, I got rejected so much in high school by girls. So asking these churches to support us has been a breeze. When they reject, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I just move on. But that sense of boldness wasn't there 4 years ago. And I think that residency allowed me to be aware of what I was gifted at, and not be afraid, and to be confident, not arrogant. And so I think just for me personally, it just empowered me. It excited me. It also allowed me to lead and shepherd my wife better. I think having her ready when I was ready, we were going to be a team. Versus before, I was going to drag her, which means it was never going to work out. It was going to be a nightmare. And so going through that just humbled my heart, I think, as a leader. And it was just so good for me personally. I think practically, just seeing how other healthy churches do it well, and just getting those insights, getting the networking has been huge. Just having these networks of friends and pastor friends that I can call. I can't tell you, when you're planning a church, you don't know what you do not know. And learning the most basic things, coming from law to even a pastoral setting, there's a lot of things you take for granted. You just show up to an event on a Sunday and you preach, and you don't realize how much work goes into that. And so having done that, seen that, watched that, having connections with people who can help us do these things and learn it, that has come from it practically. I will tell you, Gather Church will not ever be the kind of church it is going to be unless it wasn't for the residency. Yeah. Because we have learned so much from my experience from that. And so it could have taken off 4 years ago, but I think it would not have been remotely as pleasing to the Lord as it's going to be. And so, practically, just learned so much, so many tangible things. Budget, money, just learning how to do that, having connections with our executive pastor.
Set up, tear down.
Set up, all of it, man.
Sound equipment.
All of it.
I mean.
Right.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, there's things that, even if you're in ministry, not just outside of ministry, going into ministry, that you have to learn, but going from an existing situation, like an existing church, where you can just walk in. Yeah. And even if you're the one turning the sound system on, it's there. Yeah. It's a whole different ballgame to go, I'm at a school gym. What do we do? Yeah. You know, and
being humble enough to know you. And I think this is where I love hearing your story, is that you're aware that you don't know everything. And that you find that out quickly through that residency, at least for me, is that I don't know how to do these things. I thought I did. I thought I could figure it out. But then you start to work and realize, and I think that really humbles you quickly and allows you to be a better leader down the road. It becomes an example to the people you lead to.
Yeah, it's fun. As we talk occasionally, I keep hearing you say, yeah, when I was at district, I saw this, and so now we're doing this, and so it's giving you a point of reference.
Absolutely. That
maybe you didn't have before, or a different point of reference, a different perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Todd, how about you as you think about doing a residency? What are some of the things you and Heather are hoping for as you guys walk through this whole process?
The money.
Yeah. Hey, that's real. That's real. That's no joke.
Sort of. I'm just kidding. Sort of.
Yeah. You gotta feed.
Listen,
you got 2 more now.
Dude, if I'm being honest, that's always the biggest, the thing that I probably think about the most.
Sure.
When it comes to the unknown, when it comes to, I don't know if I'm really concerned about the first 3 years. I think once you get beyond that, because I want to die out there, man.
Yeah.
I want to get buried in the hills and hand over what God's given to the kids that we have.
I love it.
You know, but I hope we can do that. And my hope is for sure anchored in the gospel. But no, I think that what you just said about you something about, along the lines of, I think it's helped me love and shepherd my wife.
Yeah.
My wife has been every step with me, just so affirming and encouraging. I mean, when I felt like I was very discouraged and doubtful, she was the opposite.
Yeah.
And the Lord used her in a huge way. We've yet to really, really step into this. Come the turn of the calendar year, it'll happen.
Yeah.
And when we start to roll through this, what I love about what I think we're about to enter into the residency is, it's not just me. I mean, it has a lot to do with what I'm doing, but we're actually going to be doing this together.
Yeah,
she's
absolutely.
leaving a job she's been in for a long time. We're moving a long way away.
Not just halfway across the country, all the way.
All of that, man.
Yeah.
So when I say, I think we're gonna have to cling to Jesus, but we're also, it kind of reminds me of our second year of marriage when we didn't move to Montana, we moved to Georgia, and we were part of a parachurch camp ministry up there. And that was rough, man. I think the job that I did, because it was a job I was doing, was not for a young married couple.
Yeah.
But bro, we grew so much that year about like learning to budget well, learning to do all that, spend the time that we spent together, and the arguments that we had, and all of those things. I think the Lord, for sure, used that year. I think about that on a much larger scale. Now it feels like we're responsible for more. We've got lives that depend on us and our kids.
Sure.
And, dude, I legitimately think there are people in Jacksonville that will say, we'll go with you. And they're gonna do this. They're gonna say, I'm gonna live life on mission, 2,000 miles, however far away it is from where I'm at. What I do here, I can do there. And that kind of freaks me out as well, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
For people that would say, we're going to leave what we're used to go and do and live life on mission there. I don't think the pressure's on me per se. I really do think that people that would say, we'll do this, have their confidence fully in the gospel and the hope of the resurrected Christ. But that also, in the back of my mind, is like, man, I hope this works. Like, I hope this is going to be awesome.
I remember the first time we hired our first staff member other than me at the church plant, and I remember thinking, well, I'm responsible for 2 mortgages now,
right.
and I know it's, like you said, it's on God and he does that, but there is a weight to the reality.
So that's the approved worker.
Yeah.
Like, we're going to work. We ain't just going up there to, that we're going to study the word, and like the idea of a Bible study is good. But I mean, sun up to sundown, kingdom work, and you're walking in it, man. Right. So you're figuring out what this looks like. But for us, that's also the exciting part, is we're going to work. So walking through the assessment, those are some things that I'm really looking forward to is not the assessment, the residency, walking through the residency assessment part of it is all the change that is going to happen. I'm actually looking forward to. I'm looking forward to walking through it with my wife. I'm looking forward to casting vision.
Yeah.
And just watching, I think, the light bulb of the word and spirit of God come alive in people for this stuff.
Sure.
So yeah, man. I don't know if that answers the question.
Yeah.
No, I love that you guys both brought up your wives because they're an integral part to this thing.
Yeah,
and so
absolutely.
It's not just you doing a residency, even though you're the one doing it. It's them growing in their calling and their preparation for it. And there's that idea like face to face, back to back, shoulder to shoulder kind of life. And it's not just like your wife's back there going, go get them, I'm behind you. Yeah. That's not enough. No. Like you need her next to you in that, and she needs you next to her in that. Yep. And so some time to figure some of that out and get some exposure to that thing is really
and I think it's so great that the residency allows you to already start working towards what a plant life looks like with your spouse, right? And so for us, it was maintaining the rhythms of dating, maintaining the rhythms of healthy communication and conversations, even before we planted or launched. And so if that's not being done well, it's going to get hard quick, because once all those calls, and one of the things, I just had a meeting this morning with someone from Gather, and one of the things he asked me, he said, what can I pray for? And this is the common thing I ask people to pray for me on, but it goes back to this is, man, I just don't want to cheat on my wife with Jesus's wife. That is my struggle, because I love the church, but I often love it more than my own wife, which is so sad because she is in the church. But my struggle and the tension is learning to say, no, my family is more important than all of that. So once I create those rhythms, and you have to learn that somewhere. You can't be learning it year 1, 2, or 3 into the plant, because by then it's too late. Yeah. And so I think having a residency, and for me, it was very helpful to create that rhythm then and cement that for us so that we can then launch from a strong, healthy marriage into that. I think it's so crucial, and you guys have done that. And so it's about to get tested even more, just like mine is, but you guys will be fine, right? We'll be fine. Jesus is good to us. And so just continue to remind ourselves again and again of him being the priority is so important.
That's great. Well, guys, thanks for jumping on here, talking a little bit about the residency that you did and you're about to head into. And for you guys that are listening to this, watching this, that residency's coming out, Acts 29 residency's coming out in January of 25. It's going to be built around all the core competencies, so kind of modules around each core competency. And the way we're kind of looking at it is head, heart, and hands. And that's so good. For each of those core competencies, head, what are things that I need to learn? Like, what do I need to think differently? What do I need to know about that? Heart, like what's going on inside of me when it comes to that thing? And then hands, what do I need to do? Like, where do I need to grow? What are some of those practical? We're not pragmatists, but it is practical. It works out. And so, if it's like preaching, it's like, what do I need to learn about preaching? And what's going on inside of me? Like, either why do I want to preach so badly, or why am I so scared to preach? Those are heart things you got to root out. And then the hands, simple things like, do you know how to plan a sermon series? Have you ever preached a funeral before or a wedding? Do you have a wedding service? I mean, I can't tell you how many guys plant churches and they've never done a funeral before. And then the funeral happens, somebody dies, and then that funeral's got to happen on Thursday, and they don't have a funeral service. They don't have a sermon ready. And then they've got to preach on Sunday, and their kids' soccer's on Saturday. Life is. And so there's just some real practical pieces to those things to get ready, but head, heart, hands. And then our hope in it is, that it'll prepare guys and their wives for assessment. Like, we're unapologetically teaching to the test. Like, if you do this residency, you should be prepared walking into an assessment. And we want it to very much be about helping you sort of year zero for planting. Like, you can do a bunch of the the groundwork so that when you hit the ground in Montana, you don't have to be worrying about all kinds of things. Those things are all in place.
How does the time frame work?
Yeah, the reason we're doing it in modules is so that it can kind of expand and contract.
That's good.
But I think a year would probably be, for a guy like Todd, I think a year is probably a great amount of time frame. But if somebody needs to take that and spend a little longer on a module, you can expand it out. That's why we didn't say we're doing it in months.
That's good.
We're doing it in modules, and it's all delivered. The content and everything's all delivered online. And so a church that wants to do a residency, what they can do is take it and they could just use it stock. So like you could have your residency at the church you're doing it, and you could just run that play online and then meet with your mentor in person and work through things. Or you can take it and go, I think we need to change and tweak that a little bit. But we just want to provide a tool for churches that are wanting to plant churches, that they don't have to go and recreate everything all over again from the very start.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
They can worry about raising them up, walking with them, mentoring them, that piece of it. So
that's good.
Well, guys, thanks for being here. It was good catching up with you. Good hearing your stories. And we'll get together again in a year and see how it panned out.
Look forward to it.
Awesome.
All right.
Excited.
Thanks, guys.
Hopefully I'm
thank
still
you.
here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you.
See ya.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Acts 29 podcast. If you want to connect with Acts 29 or find out more about planting a church with Acts 29, you can go to acts29.com. Go ahead and hit like on the podcast, and don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks again for joining us.